The city skyline gleamed through the glass windows of the towering office building, a symbol of power and wealth. Inside, the CEO sat behind a massive mahogany desk, tapping his pen impatiently as the next candidate was announced. When the door opened, there was no polished suit or designer bag, just a young woman in a simple dress, her hands rough from years of hard work, her shoes worn but clean. She walked in with quiet dignity, her gaze steady and kind. "Good morning," she said softly, her voice carrying both warmth and confidence. "I'm here for the interview." The CEO raised an eyebrow, leaning back in his leather chair with a smirk tugging at his lips. She didn't look like someone who belonged in this gleaming office. To him, she looked far too ordinary, even out of place. He exchanged a quick glance with the other executives, and a few chuckles escaped the room. "The farmer's daughter?" he asked mockingly, scanning her resume as if it were unworthy of his attention. "Well, this should be interesting." She did not flinch. Instead, she sat upright, folding her hands gently in her lap. Her calmness was almost unsettling, as though she had already faced storms far greater than the arrogance in that room. Though the odds seemed stacked against her, there was something about the way she carried herself, humble yet unshakably strong, that hinted this interview might not go the way the CEO expected. It was only the beginning, and the room didn't yet realize they were about to be challenged in ways they never imagined. The CEO leaned forward, his tone sharp and laced with condescension. "Tell me," he said, narrowing his eyes, "what could someone like you possibly know about managing a corporation of this size? Running a farm is hardly the same as running a multimillion-dollar company." His words hung heavy in the air, and a few members of the board shifted uncomfortably, some even smirking as though they already knew how this interview would end. It was less a question and more a dismissal, a test designed to break her confidence before she had a chance to begin. The young woman paused, taking a breath, her expression calm. She had heard tones like his before, from those who believed wealth made them superior. Instead of shrinking back, she leaned into her chair, her eyes never leaving his. "With respect, sir," she said gently, "what I know has nothing to do with titles or glass offices. What I know has been learned through years of challenges no textbook ever taught." Her words carried a steadiness that unsettled him. He tried again, pressing harder, tossing rapid-fire questions about leadership, competition, and profits, each one designed to expose her lack of formal experience. But she didn't falter. She answered with simplicity, with clarity, and without a trace of fear. The more he tried to corner her, the more it became clear, she wasn't there to impress him with jargon or charm. She was there with something far more powerful, the truth of her lived experience. The room grew still as she began to speak, her voice calm but carrying the weight of memory. "On our farm," she said, "the day begins long before the sun rises. We work in the cold, in the heat, through storms and through droughts. I've learned discipline not from a classroom, but from watching my father push a plow when his body was weary, and my mother stretching a single meal to feed many mouths. Resilience isn't an idea to me, it's survival." Her words, simple yet profound, seemed to pierce the glossy arrogance of the room. She went on, describing how teamwork wasn't a strategy but a way of life. "Every harvest depends on each person pulling their weight. If one of us falters, the whole family feels it. That's leadership. It's not about commanding, it's about carrying each other." The executives shifted uncomfortably, no longer smirking. Even the CEO leaned in, his smugness thinning. Then came the revelation that silenced every whisper. She told them how, despite their struggles, her family never kept their blessings to themselves. "Every extra dollar we saved from selling crops," she said, her voice softening, "we used to help children in our village go to school. Some of those children are doctors, teachers, even entrepreneurs now. We had little, but we shared what we had, because no one rises alone." For the first time, the CEO's confident grin faded. Her words were no longer answers to questions. They were lessons, lessons no business degree could teach. Silence filled the boardroom. The usual hum of whispered judgments and rustling papers was gone. Every eye was fixed on the young woman, her quiet strength radiating more power than the CEO's towering office ever could. The man who had started the interview with mocking arrogance now sat frozen, his polished confidence unraveling. Her words about sacrifice and lifting others had struck a place he had long forgotten, a place buried beneath years of chasing profits and prestige. She leaned forward slightly, her voice steady but filled with emotion. True leadership isn't measured by the size of an office or the number of people working beneath you. It's measured by how many people you raise up with you. My father taught me that. My mother lived it. And I've seen lives change because of it. Her gaze swept across the room, meeting the eyes of each board member, not with challenge but with compassion, as if inviting them to remember something within themselves. One executive lowered her eyes, blinking back tears. Another shifted uncomfortably, as though ashamed of the smug laughter he'd shared earlier. Even the CEO, who prided himself on being unshakable, felt something break loose inside him. For the first time in years, he questioned himself, not his business model, not his profits, but his humanity. What had begun as a test to belittle a farmer's daughter had turned into something no one in that room expected, a mirror held up to their own souls, forcing them to see what true greatness really meant. The CEO slowly rose from his chair, his face no longer wearing the smirk that had greeted her when she entered. His voice, once sharp and filled with pride, carried a tone of humility that startled even himself. "You've taught me more in these few minutes than I've learned in years of boardrooms," he admitted quietly. Then, in front of his stunned executives, he extended his hand. "The position is yours. We need people like you, leaders who understand the true meaning of responsibility." The young woman looked at his hand, then lifted her eyes with a gentle smile. "I'm honored," she said softly, "but I cannot accept. My work is not in offices or corporations. My mission is back home, helping my community, making sure no child goes without education, no family goes without hope." Her words were not rejection but a revelation, a reminder that purpose is greater than prestige. The CEO's hand dropped slowly, but instead of offense, there was admiration in his eyes. "Then let me help," he said firmly. "If my resources can support your mission, I want to be part of it." Around the table, executives nodded, moved not by profit but by something deeper. As she left the office, the once cold atmosphere felt transformed. The arrogant man who thought he had all the answers had been humbled, and those who had laughed now carried a spark of something new inside them. Success, they realized, wasn't about wealth or power, it was about the lives we choose to touch along the way.